My ex-wife and her lawyer boyfriend left me with nothing. No house, no car, not even my kids. Just a suitcase and an old box of junk they thought was worthless. They laughed as I walked away. But inside that box was a single card, green, faded, nearly falling apart. I took it to the bank out of desperation. The manager scanned it, blinked twice, then asked to see my ID. "Sir," he said, "this account has been active since 1932. What showed up on the screen nearly knocked me off my feet. And from that moment on, they had no idea the storm I was about to become. If someone took everything from you, but left behind one forgotten thing, what will you do? Tell us in the comment section. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us your name and where you're watching from. We'll love to give you a shout out in our next video. I used to think that losing everything would feel like falling, like plummeting into some dark void you couldn't crawl out of. But the truth is, it's not sudden. It's quiet, a steady erosion of who you are, until all that's left is the shell of a man sitting on the curb outside his own house, holding a suitcase and a box. That box, it was the only thing my ex-wife let me keep. She took the house, the cars, even the dog. Said I could keep my sentimental trash, while her lawyer boyfriend winked behind her. My name was scraped off the mailbox like gum off a shoe. Our kids, Sarah and Lucas, chose her side. Of course they did. What kid sides with the father who can't afford to take them to dinner? The court hearing had lasted 23 minutes. That was how long it took to erase 21 years of marriage. The judge didn't even look me in the eye when he granted her the restraining order. "She feels threatened," her attorney had said. He raised his voice during a custody discussion. I wanted to scream, but that would only prove their point. So I left, not even with dignity, just exhaustion. I checked into a motel out on Route 9, the kind of place that charges you hourly but gives you a weekly discount. $52.50 a night. I did the math as I handed over my credit card. I had maybe 4 nights left before that. 2 would be taken from me. I opened the box on the motel bed, not because I thought there was anything important inside, but because I needed to touch something that hadn't turned its back on me. It smelled like old dust and cedar. Inside were faded black and white photographs. My grandfather standing in front of a Studebaker, my grandmother holding a baby I assumed was my mother. There were warm medals, brittle letters from overseas, and underneath it all, an old card. Bank of Providence. Dark green, fraying at the edges. The name etched into it in blocky, gold lettering. Samuel Carver. My grandfather. I stared at it for a moment. Then I turned it over. There was a number on the back. No expiration date. No chip. It looked like something out of a museum. For a second, I laughed. The kind of dry, humorless laugh that sounds more like a cough. I slipped it into my pocket. I don't even know why. I guess I just needed a reason to get out of that motel room the next morning. A place to walk to. A way to pretend I still had a life. The Bank of Providence still had a branch downtown. I'd passed it 100 times. It looked like a courthouse, limestone columns, glass doors that smelled like polish and privilege. I stood outside for 10 minutes before going in. The lobby was quiet. A woman behind the reception desk smiled like she didn't mean it. "Can I help you, sir?" I pulled the card from my pocket. "I found this. It was my grandfather's. I don't know. I wanted to see if the account was ever closed." She took it like she was touching something fragile. "That's vintage," she said, eyebrows raised. "Let me get someone from management." 10 minutes later, a tall man in a navy suit stepped out from a side office. Mid-50s, silver cufflinks, the kind of skin that said, "I play golf every weekend." His name tag read Martin Clark, branch manager. "You have the card?" he asked, his voice clipped, efficient. I handed it over. He scanned it with a small handheld device. The screen lit up. He froze. "Wait here." I sat in a vinyl chair for what felt like an hour. Finally, Martin reappeared. He held the card like it had turned into gold. "Mr. Carver, I just need to confirm. You are the legal heir to Samuel Carver." "Yes," I said slowly. "He was my grandfather. He passed away when I was 17. Martin nodded. "You'll need to provide documentation. Birth certificates, death certificate, anything connecting you as next of kin. But the account." He trailed off. "What about the account?" Martin glanced around the lobby, then leaned closer. This account has been active since 1932. The trust auto-renews every 10 years. Compounded interest. No withdrawals. Not once. I swallowed. So it's still open? He turned the screen toward me, and what I saw froze me. 7 digits, followed by a decimal and 2 more. $8,297,441.76. I blinked. This has to be a mistake. Martin shook his head. It's not. And that's just in the trust account. There's also a portfolio. Stocks, bonds, real estate shares. Mr. Carver was an early investor in several industrial rail lines and mid-century insurance conglomerates. He was a janitor, I whispered. Martin gave a soft, reverent smile. A janitor who knew how to plan. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even think. All I could do was remember the last line of the note I'd found behind his medals. For when our name is stolen, let this buy it back. My ex-wife thought she left me with nothing. She didn't know she'd left me with the one thing that mattered. Legacy. I walked out of the Bank of Providence with the card in my pocket, but not before Martin Clark asked for my contact information. He handed me a business card, his fingers still shaking slightly, and said, "We'll need those documents to proceed." I suggest moving quickly, Mr. Carver. I nodded like I understood what that meant. I didn't. The moment the doors shut behind me, I had to sit on the cold granite steps. The city hummed around me, the rush of buses, the chatter of people with real lives. And I sat there like a man who had just been told gravity didn't apply to him anymore. 8 million. I pulled the card back out and stared at it. The plastic felt heavier now. This little rectangle had survived world wars, market crashes, recessions, and a family collapse. I thought about the last time I saw my grandfather, his hands trembling, his voice thin from chemo, but his eyes still clear when he took me aside and said, "Don't let them take your name, son. Not the way they tried to take mine." I didn't know what he meant then. I do now. Back at the motel, I opened the box again like it was some kind of holy relic. I searched every crease, every old envelope, every forgotten note. That's when I found it. A letter in his handwriting, sealed in an envelope dated 1983. The ink had faded, but his script was still careful. To my grandson, in case this world becomes cruel to you, I've seen how they steal dignity and call it justice. If this finds you when you have nothing else, know that it is not charity, it is inheritance. I didn't build this for comfort. I built it for vengeance, slow and steady. They won't see you coming. Use it wisely. Do not warn them. They laughed at me, too. I read it 5 times. Every word seared into my bones like scripture. My grandfather had lived poor, died modest, and somehow planted a fortune underground like a time bomb for the day his bloodline was dragged through the dirt. I didn't sleep that night. I went to the public library the next morning and started printing records, deeds, trust documentation. I found a copy of his will. I called the county office to order death certificates. I contacted a records officer for my own birth certificate. The woman on the phone said it'd take 5 to 7 business days. I asked if I could pay for expedited delivery. She said no, but I had time now. And patience. The part that stunned me more than the money was how fast the fear left my body. It didn't melt out of me. It cracked off in sheets, like frost off a windshield under sudden heat. I realized that for the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone anything. I didn't have to ask for permission, forgiveness, or room to breathe. I didn't have to cower, because now I could buy the damn air. My ex-wife, Marlene, had taken everything in the divorce. The house, in her name, the Range Rover, a gift from her lawyer boyfriend, the same one who represented her in court. I had no legal recourse at the time, no way to afford a proper defense. She even filed to limit my visitation, saying I was emotionally unstable. She got to play the clean, grieving woman, the brave single mother who finally stood up to her manipulative husband. Meanwhile, I was sleeping in a motel with black mold in the ceiling and eating 2 $4-3 gas station sandwiches. But now I had a war chest. I didn't go wild. I didn't buy a car or cash out the account. I didn't want Marlene or that parasite boyfriend of hers to sniff out a shift in the wind. I kept playing the part. Still wore the same thrift store jacket. Still showed up to court-mandated parenting sessions with duct-taped shoes and a $5 haircut. But at night, I was writing a new ending. I hired a financial strategist under a dummy LLC I created through a legal firm based in Nevada. I told them I was a silent partner managing legacy funds and needed full discretion. They didn't ask questions. I paid for their silence. Good money buys good silence. I moved the trust under a protected entity. I set up a family office, just like the real old money types do. And I started buying, slowly, quietly, shares in the very brokerage that managed my ex-wife's real estate transactions. Land beneath properties they didn't know were owned by Shell Corp connected to me. I even made a few calls to zoning commissions, just enough to be a problem later. And here's the thing about men like my grandfather. Men who die quiet but think loud. They leave behind blueprints. He hadn't just left me cash. He'd left me leverage, ties to industrial land, overlooked stock options, and arbitration rights in companies I'd never heard of until I saw my name, listed under beneficiary lines. I wasn't just inheriting wealth. I was inheriting weapons. Meanwhile, Marlene posted Instagram stories from weekend wine tastings. She'd moved in with the lawyer, Ethan, and together they hosted backyard fundraisers for divorced women in transition. I watched every story, not out of bitterness, but calculation. I was waiting for the perfect photo, and I got it. A group selfie on the patio of her newly renovated home. Ethan's arm around her. My kids in the background, half smiling. And in the corner, my old watch. It wasn't expensive. Just a $200 Seiko my grandfather had gifted me when I graduated trade school. Marlene said it was too ugly and that I should get a smartwatch instead. She must have pawned it, and Ethan wore it like some kind of joke. The caption read, "Building a new future. Healing. Love. Gratitude. Dizzy Sparkles #blessed not broken #new beginnings." I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened a new folder on my computer and labeled it Restoration Plan, Phase 1. That's when the work began. I wasn't going to destroy them. That would have been easy. No, I was going to educate them. One humiliating discovery at a time. And when they came to understand who they'd thrown away, I wouldn't even be in the room to see it. I'd be too busy reclaiming every inch of my grandfather's name. You have to understand something. I didn't want revenge. Not at first. I wanted peace. A quiet life. A job I didn't hate. A family that looked me in the eye. Maybe Sundays with my kids and a dog that ran to the door when I got home. That was it. But peace is a luxury. And when people take everything from you and expect you to thank them for the scraps, peace starts to feel like a lie you were too polite to question. So I stopped being polite. I started being precise. The first thing I did was buy back the motel I was living in. Not directly. I used the LLC, Southwind Partners. Set it up out of Delaware, filtered through a trust based in Alberta. I learned from my grandfather's records how to layer ownership until you disappeared into it. Paper ghosts. The motel was part of a 5-property portfolio run by a local developer who was bleeding cash. I paid 30% above market value, an aggressive offer he couldn't refuse. He had no idea the man sitting in room 103 was the buyer. 3 weeks later, I evicted myself. Publicly. With drama. I stormed into the office, argued with the new manager, who didn't recognize me, and demanded to know why my rent went up $12. "It's the new owners," she said with a shrug. I made a scene. Said it was unjust. Slammed the door on the way out. Let the people watching think I was still falling. That's the thing about acting poor. You get underestimated. Which was exactly what I needed. The next move was Ethan. The lawyer. The boyfriend. The man who accidentally filed court paperwork that left me without custody or counsel for 30 crucial days. Marlene claimed it was an oversight. Ethan said, "We all make mistakes." The judge called it unfortunate, but not illegal. I made a note of that phrase. Not illegal. Because the best revenge is legal. Turns out Ethan had a reputation in some circles for being efficient, which is what wealthier clients call lawyers who bend rules without breaking them. A few bad real estate flips. A quietly dropped sexual misconduct allegation in 2017. And most importantly, 3 partnerships dissolved without explanation in under 5 years. I knew a man like Ethan would never resist easy money. So I made myself into it. I had a contact. An old roommate from my trade school days. now a corporate investigator. Pose as a hedge fund rep. We created a fake entity, Mariner Group Holdings. All bells and whistles. Fake returns, manufactured earnings reports, a logo that looked like it belonged in a Wall Street elevator. We reached out to Ethan for a meeting. Said we were expanding into the Pacific Northwest. Said we needed legal eyes for a $70 million property acquisition. He took the bait in under 5 minutes. Ethan showed up to the meeting with slicked back hair and a Montblanc pen. He wore a watch I once bought Marlene for our 10th anniversary. He said things like vertical integration and cross-market arbitration while pretending to understand our fake strategy. He asked if we offered referral fees. We said of course. That night, I watched from a dark sedan parked across the street as he came home to the house I'd built, the house I once installed dimmer switches in by hand so Marlene could feel like a real adult. I could see them through the window, drinking wine I probably paid for, laughing, and all I could think was, good, because what's coming next, you'll need the memory of laughter to hold on to. The next few weeks, I turned to the court documents from the divorce. I'd never really read them the first time. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I was tired, broken. I signed whatever they put in front of me just to make the noise stop. But now I had time. And time reveals cracks. Ethan had done something sloppy. There was a clause, buried in legal jargon, that stated any future discovery of unclaimed marital assets could reopen financial arbitration. It was a throwaway line, standard in divorces where assets might emerge later. But the wording was loose. Any asset not disclosed at the time of proceedings. He assumed I had nothing left to discover. He didn't know about the trust. He didn't know about the 1932 account, the stocks, the silent holdings in transport, the land beneath half of the county's light rail expansion. But he would. Eventually. The final step in phase 1 was letting Marlene see me. Not speak to me. Not hear me. Just see. I timed it perfectly. Her book club met every second Saturday at that overpriced bakery on Holcomb. She'd park her Lexus around 2:15, wear oversized sunglasses, and always post a selfie next to a pastry she never finished. I got there early, sat at the table nearest the front, wore a pressed button-down, new shoes, let the sleeves roll up just enough to show the Rolex I'd bought at auction, quiet, vintage, not flashy. I brought one of my grandfather's ledgers, annotated it like it was a financial report, ordered tea like I belonged there. When she walked in, she glanced toward me, paused. Her eyes narrowed. Recognition hit her like a slap. She didn't say anything. She wouldn't. Not with her friends nearby. But I saw it in the twitch at the corner of her mouth. She knew I wasn't losing anymore. She just didn't know how I was winning. And that was the power. Because people like Marlene and Ethan, they only know how to steal from people who look weak. They don't know what to do when the person they betrayed stops begging and starts building. There are things I'll never forget. The smell of bleach in the motel bathroom. The way my daughter's hand slipped out of mine the day she chose to sit beside her mother in court. The sound of a judge saying, "It's unfortunate, but not illegal," while signing away everything I built. But most of all, I remember the day I took the house back. Not physically. Not like some bitter ex creeping back through a window with a crowbar and a grudge. No, I took it legally. Elegantly. With a pen, a clause, and a meeting no one saw coming. Let me explain. See, back when Marlene and I bought that house, I'd put up the entire down payment. $138,000, taken straight from my old retirement account after 20 years in construction management. She didn't have a job at the time, said she was between passions. I didn't care. I loved her. So I put the deed in both our names. Big mistake. After the divorce, Ethan managed to have my name removed entirely. Claimed I'd forfeited ownership as part of the settlement. I hadn't understood the paperwork. I just signed it. He called it standard procedure. Another phrase I would come to hate. But here's the thing. The mortgage wasn't through a traditional bank. It was through a private lending firm that bought and sold home loans like baseball cards. They didn't care about the people in the houses, just the payments coming in. And 2 months ago, I bought that firm. Not directly, of course. I did it through Southwind Partners, the same entity I used to buy the motel. I'd been watching that firm for weeks. I waited until their quarterly was down, until they needed liquidity, then swooped in through a third-party brokerage posing as a Canadian pension fund. By the time the deal closed, I owned 51% of the company, which meant I now controlled the note on Marlene's home. And thanks to some quiet policy changes I had drafted. One's about portfolio alignment and performance-based reevaluation. I had the legal right to call in the full balance if I believed the property value was unstable. That's exactly what I did. On a Tuesday, I still remember the date, October 17th, 9:12 a.m. Marlene received a notice in the mail. Certified. Plain envelope. No warning. No fanfare. Just a line in black ink. Effective immediately, full payment of the outstanding mortgage balance is due within 21 calendar days. Failure to do so will result in foreclosure proceedings. $428,000. Due in 3 weeks. I know exactly how she reacted because Ethan called me. He didn't know it was me, of course. He called the number listed on the lender contact sheet, a dedicated line that forwarded directly to my assistant, who patched him through to me under the alias Mr. Howard. Mr. Howard, Ethan said, voice tight. There seems to be a serious misunderstanding regarding account 7206. My client received a notice that frankly seems predatory. I let a silence stretch long enough to make him squirm. Then I said, nothing predatory about enforcing terms your client agreed to. He shifted tactics. She's never missed a payment. Not once. I smiled. That's not the issue. The issue is risk exposure. Neighborhood values are trending downward. We're restructuring the portfolio. He tried to argue, threaten, bluff, said he'd go to the press. I let him run his mouth dry. Then I said, your client lives in a house she didn't pay for, in a neighborhood that's about to learn how hard it is to sell with liens hanging over half the block. She has 21 days. Suggest you advise her to find a solution. Then I hung up. 21 days. Tick, tick, tick. The first week, they tried to fight it. Filed motions. Sent strongly worded letters. Nothing stuck. Because everything I'd done was legal. My team had made sure of it. Every clause, every signature, every dotted I was airtight. The second week, they tried to sell. Too late. I had already placed a lien on the property. Filed a zoning review request. Posted a pending environmental audit notice through one of my shell core, citing potential runoff issues from the backyard fire pit Ethan installed without a permit. Just enough to freeze buyer interest. The third week, I got another call. This time from Marlene. Blocked number. She left a voicemail. Please. I don't know what you're doing or who you are or what the hell this is about, but I have kids in this house. This isn't right. Please. Call me back. I didn't. I was already busy with phase 3. See, while they were panicking about the house, I was laying siege to their reputation. Quietly, strategically, I sent an anonymous tip to the State Bar Association about Ethan's partnership history, along with some suspicious documents from the Mariner Group meeting. Nothing criminal. Just enough to trigger an internal review. I forwarded one of Marlene's public fundraising posts to a watchdog group that tracked misuse of charitable donations. Turns out her Women in Transition foundation hadn't filed taxes in 2 years. Then I sent a single envelope to my daughter. Inside was a photo of the Seiko watch Ethan wore, and a note that said, "This was your grandfather's. Ask your mother where it came from." No signature, no return address. Because this wasn't about winning them back. It was about telling the truth. Quietly, patiently, irrefutably. On day 20, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Lucas. Dad, Mom says we might have to move. She's crying a lot. What's going on? I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed, I'm sorry you're caught in the middle. Just remember who built that house. Remember who paid for your school lunches and never asked for thanks. He didn't reply. I didn't expect him to. That night, I poured a glass of scotch from a bottle I'd been saving, sat in the motel office, the one I now owned, and watched the streetlights flicker through the window. I wasn't happy, but I was clean. I didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't take back what wasn't mine. I used the very system they believed I didn't understand. I turned it inward, like a mirror, and made them stare at themselves until they blinked. 3 weeks after the house was foreclosed, I drove past it. Not to gloat. Just to witness the silence. The front lawn was overgrown. The for sale sign leaned awkwardly in the wind, the kind of tilt that told you no one was bothering to fix anything anymore. The porch light flickered weakly, probably a loose wire. I used to change those bulbs myself every October. The shutters still had the color I picked out the year Lucas was born. Navy blue, so the house would feel strong, Marlene had said. It didn't feel strong anymore. It felt vacant. Not just physically, morally. That house was built on trust, time, and sacrifice. And they tried to turn it into a monument to their entitlement. Now, it was just a box with a cracked foundation. I didn't buy it back. I could have. Cash. Could have moved in, repainted the shutters, stood on the front lawn, and dared the neighborhood to blink first. But I didn't. Because when you finally clawed your way out of the hole they buried you in, the last thing you want is dirt under your nails again. Instead, I bought a small cabin outside of town. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and enough space to breathe. The kitchen window faces east. Every morning, I watch the light move across the trees and remind myself that clarity doesn't roar, it whispers. The money from my grandfather's trust kept growing. Interest, dividends, compounding like clockwork. My financial advisor said it was the most elegant account she'd ever seen. It's like he knew how the world would twist, she said. I just nodded. Because he did. Samuel Carver wasn't just planning for retirement. He was building an ark. One meant for survival. Not comfort. Not luxury. Just proof. Proof that our name couldn't be erased. And I carried that name into a new life. The LLCs were converted into scholarships. One for children of tradesmen who lost their pensions in faulty bankruptcies, like my friend Cal from the tile union, whose 401k disappeared overnight. Another for teenage fathers, kids like I once was, who were trying to build something with a nail gun, a rented truck, and hope no one mocks them for their dreams. I made one final donation in my grandfather's name to the local museum, $250,000 to restore a train car from 1943, the same line he used to ride to his night shifts. The plaque reads, "Donated by the Carver Legacy Trust, in honor of quiet builders." I didn't attach my first name. No press conference. No photo op. Because the people who need recognition are often the ones who die without it. 2 months later, I got a letter from Lucas. Handwritten. I didn't recognize the envelope at first. Inside was a short note. "Dad, I didn't understand before. I do now. Mom still won't talk about it, but I saw the documents you sent. I saw the photo. I remember the watch. I remember you tucking me in with it still on your wrist. I'm sorry for everything I said. I didn't know the whole story. I'd like to come visit the cabin, if that's okay. L." I read it twice, then a third time. Then I sat there, letter in my hand, tea growing cold beside me. It's a strange thing, vindication. It doesn't roar. It hums. A soft current under your ribs that says, you weren't crazy. You were right to survive. He visited the next weekend. Didn't ask for money. Didn't ask for explanations. Just wanted to sit by the fire, listen to stories about a man he never really knew, his great-grandfather, and sip hot chocolate out of a chipped mug I'd found in a secondhand store. He asked if I forgave Marlene. I told him forgiveness isn't a door you open for others. It's a fire you put out before it burns your own house down. I don't hate her, I said, but I won't forget who I became because of her. Lucas nodded slowly. She told us you abandoned us. I didn't, I said. I was erased. There's a difference. That night, we sat on the porch and watched the stars pull themselves across the sky like threads in an old quilt. He asked about the trust, about the account, about the man who started it all. He was a janitor, I said, but he planned like a king. Lucas leaned back in the chair. So what happens now? I smiled. That's the thing about inheritance. It's not about what you get. It's about what you do next. If someone stripped you of everything, your name, your home, your children, and left you with only a box from the past, would you use it to survive? Or would you rebuild something no one could ever take from you again?